Hey guys, welcome to day 2 of our 15 days to Spring Boot Mastery Challenge. Today we will be doing it in two parts. In part 1, we have done the environment setup that is needed for this challenge. This is part 2. In part 2, let us create two simple examples of a Spring application using Maven. Remember, we have still not started with Spring Boot, so we will be using Maven to create Spring applications. If you have not completed the environment setup, please complete it and then proceed to this video. Now, let us get started. So, this is the folder where we have extracted Spring Toolsuit. Let me open Spring Toolsuit. Already we have created the workspace. Let me click launch. Now we are going to create a Maven project. Either you can create the Maven project from here, which is available as a link, or go to File, New, Maven project. Select the first checkbox. Create a simple project. Click Next. Now we need to provide the group ID and artifact ID. Artifact ID is the project name. Group ID is a folder name. So you can give the folder name using three different words. That is reverse URL. What is the purpose of group ID? After you have completed your application, if you want others to use your application, you need to convert it into a jar. Now this jar should be available for others. So what we used to do is, we need to deploy it in the remote repository. Not Git, but I am talking about remote Maven repository. So this folder will be the location where the final jar file will be available for others. Do not worry, I will show you a practical example when we are working with Spring. Now let me give the group ID com.shristi.dist. Artifact ID is the project name, Spring Basics. Leave the remaining things, click Finish. Now the application is ready. Let me open it. Here there are multiple folders. SRC main Java. This is the source folder where you will be creating all your Java files. SRC main resources. This is the folder which will have the configuration files. As in, it can be XML or properties or YAML file. YAML means yet another markup language. Going forward, in the end, while working with Spring Boot, we will be using YAML file. SRC test Java. This is the place where you will be adding all the test cases. SRC test resources. This is the place where you will be having the configuration files related to your test cases. Okay. And what is this target folder? As I told you, after you have completed your application, you will be creating the jar file. Where the jar file will be sitting, it will be inside this target folder. If the jar file is available within the target folder, it cannot be used by others. So we will be deploying it to the Maven repository. That time, it will go and sit in the folder name that we have given. Okay. The final thing is form.xml. This is the place where we will be providing the dependencies for our application. We are going to convert this Maven project into a Spring application. My dear guys, if you have worked with Java, you know directly you can go and add the Java classes inside SRC main Java and you can work with your application. But now we are creating a Spring application. So it means you need to add the jar files needed to work with Spring. It means you need to add the dependencies. Okay. Now how to add the dependencies? We need to go to the browser and we should get the appropriate dependency. Let me open the browser. Search for Spring Context Maven. This is the dependency that we need for working with our Spring application. Click on the first search result. Scroll down. Always pick and choose the version which is downloaded very often. If you notice, in the latest version 6.2.0 is downloaded very often. So click on it. scroll down, copy this dependency. Okay, it is copied. Come back to Spring Tool Suite. Now, inside this, we cannot add the dependency directly. It should be added inside dependencies tag. Why? When we are working with Spring application, we will be having many such dependencies. All the dependencies should be added within dependencies tag. Okay. Now, the moment you have added Spring, if you notice, automatically you have got Maven dependencies. Let me open this folder. Here you can see all the jar files that are added to this application. Spring context, Spring beans, Spring core, Spring expression. We are creating a simple standalone application using Spring with the help of Maven. These are the jar files that are needed for our application, so it is added automatically. If you want to know more, click on dependency hierarchy. We have selected only context. Context depends on AOP. AOP depends on beans. So all the internal dependencies are also added automatically. Okay. Where is this path pointing to? It is pointing to .m2 repository. .m2 is nothing but my Maven repository. For everybody, you will be having your own repository. The path will be C drive, users, your machine name, inside that .m2 folder. Here in my case, C drive, users, my machine name is SPRIY, and inside that .m2 folder. Okay. Now let me open pom.xml. In pom.xml, if you see the dependency, it has got group ID, which is org.spring-framework. Artifact ID is Spring context. 6.2.0 is the version. Whatever you are seeing here are converted into folders. Within that folder only that context file is available. Let me show you how. We are having context, right? .m2 repository org Spring framework. Whatever you have got in group ID. Actually, I have not given. In their project, in their pom.xml, they have given the folder structure. Then Spring context. Spring context is again a folder. 6.2.0, that is again a folder. Inside that, the jar file is available. Now let me show you directly. Let me open C drive. Users, Priya, .m2 repository. Inside that org Spring framework. Inside that Spring context. Inside that, just today we have downloaded it, so it is 6.2.0. If you notice here, I have got so many versions starting from 5.x, because whenever I am doing trainings, I also upgrade myself to the latest version. So with the help of you guys, I have upgraded to 6.2.0. Let me open this folder. Here we are having Spring context. This is the jar file that we need for our Spring application for creating a standalone project. That is the project that runs in the console. Okay, let me go back to Spring Tool Suite. Fine. Now, here we are working with the latest version of Spring. This means we should use the latest Java version. That is Java versions greater than 17. When you are creating a Maven project, the Java version is 1.8. We cannot work with 1.8. We need to upgrade to Java 21 or Java 17. You can do this manually also. Right click, build path, configure build path and proceed further. That is not the right approach. Here itself we will change the Java version. So go and add properties. Inside properties, I am informing Maven's compiler to change the Java version to 21. Guys, you should be very careful with the spelling, with the dot, with the hyphen. If you are not doing it properly, the version will not change. Meaning to say that it did not understand the command. Maven.compiler.source. I have 21 installed in my system, so I am using that. Again copy this. Maven.compiler.target. Okay. Save this. Whether the Java version is changed now, still it is not changed. So what you need to do is you have to update the project. Select your Maven project, right click, Maven update project. Click force update of snapshots. Select this checkbox and click OK. The moment you do it, automatically it should change to 21. If it is not changing to the version that you have given, it means there is something wrong in this particular part of the code. Maybe there is a typo, or you have given a hyphen instead of a dot, or some other mistake. Okay, fine. Now the setup is ready. What next? Let us create a simple employee class. Select src main Java, right click, new class. Let me give the package name com.shristi.training. Let me give the class name as employee. Click finish. Let us have one instance variable which can be employee name and one single method. Private string employee name. Use camel case. Please do not give uppercase for your instance variables. Going forward, when you are working with Spring Boot will not understand uppercase of your instance variables. Now let us add a method, public string greet. Return welcome plus employee name. Together with this, let me also add a setter method. Let me go to source, generate getters. Okay, let me add setter method and click generate. Okay, this is my employee class. What is that we have learned? If I want Spring Framework to create an object for my class should be annotated with @component. So, let me go and add @component annotation. Okay. Now, we need to create the IOC container and perform all the other operations. Before that, let us see how this will be done in Java. So, let me create a main class. Select the package, right click, new class. Class name is emp main. Select public static void main, click finish. So, if we are doing the same application using Java, you will create an object of employee. Employee is equal to new employee. Let us set the name for employee name. Employee.set employee name as Priya. Then let us call the method using the employee object. Employee.greet. The return type is a string. Get it in a variable and print it. String message is equal to. In the next line, print the message. This is how you do using Java. But if you are going to work with Spring Framework is responsible for creating the objects that you need for your application. If the objects are having any other external dependencies, all the dependencies should be attached to this object and the object should be given to you. This is the scenario. But now we have not learned how to create the IOC container. Yesterday, I have just explained what is an IOC container. So now let us see how to create an IOC container and how to get the object from the IOC container. Let us not do it directly here. First, let me write it out and then we will come back here. The two IOC containers that we have seen are Bean Factory and Application Context. Application Context has more features than Bean Factory. So, we will be using Application Context. Application Context is equal to. This application context is an IOC container which is responsible for creating objects for our application. In our scenario, we want the IOC container to create the employee object. This is an interface. We cannot use the interface. We need to use the implementation classes of application context. There are many implementation classes. In our case, we are working with annotation. So, we need to use the implementation class that can understand annotations. So the class name is new annotation config application context, within which you need to inform the IOC container where the classes that are annotated with at component is available. So you need to provide the package name. In our case, we can give it as com.shristi. The moment you run this application, the IOC container will go and scan this package, identify the classes that are annotated with at component, at service, and create objects for those classes. Okay. Now, how will I know what are the objects that are created? For that, we can retrieve the objects that are created by the IOC container. The method is context.getBeanDefinitionNames. This will return the list of Java objects created by the IOC container. Okay, we will see that. In our case, we are having only one single class employee which is annotated with add component. So the IOC container will create an object for this class. What will be the name of the spring bean? The spring bean will be the class name in lowercase or camel case. Suppose say if my class name is employee, the bean name will be employee in lowercase. If the class name is employee details, the bean name will be employee details in camel case. E will be lowercase, D will be uppercase. Okay. Now how to retrieve it? For that, we will be using a method called context.getBean by passing the bean name. In our case, the bean name is employee. This will return an employee object. So this means the IOC container has created the objects that are needed for our application. The return type here will be an object, so I need to downcast it. Now that I have got my object, using this object, I can call all the methods that are available in this particular class. In our case, I want to call the greet method, so I can call it very easily. Remember, when you are working with Spring, you will never use new keyword. You are not going to create objects for your application. The IOC container is responsible for creating objects for your application. You might be wondering, here you have used new, what is the purpose of it? In this example, because we are using Maven, we have to create the IOC container and we have to make the setup for our Spring application. Going forward, when you are working with Spring Boot only is responsible for creating the IOC container. There, you will not be using new keyword at all. Meaning to say that all the objects that are needed for your application will be automatically created by the IOC container. Okay, now let us try this in the coding part. Let me go back to Spring Tool Suite. Now let me comment this. Instead of having this as a Java application, we are going to convert it into a Spring application. So the first step is we need to create the IOC container. Let me write the code. Application context. It is from context package. Context is equal to new annotation config application context, which takes Spring base packages as a parameter. Now in our case, the base package is com.shristi. You can give it as com or com.shristi or com.shristi.training, because in this particular example, we are having only one single class inside com.shristi.training. If I give com, it will go inside com and the sub packages of com. Okay. The moment we add this line and we start our application, the IOC container gets created first. Then it will go and scan the package that is given within the parameter. It will identify all the classes that are annotated with at component, at service, and it will create objects for those classes. These objects are called as spring beans. Now I want to know the objects that are created by the IOC container. So let us use the method context.getBeanDefinitionNames. The return type is a string array. String bean names is equal to. We can use a for loop to iterate it, or you can use streams API to iterate and print the names. Let me use a for each. String bean. Syso bean. Okay. Now, if you notice, I have not done anything. I have not created an employee object or anything. But the IOC container has created all the objects that are needed for our application. In our case, we have annotated only employee class with add component. Now, let me run this application. How to run it? This is not a Spring Boot application. This is a simple Java application only. So, you can select your main class, right click, run as Java application. If you see, these are the 4 objects created by the IOC container. The objects created by the IOC container are called as Spring Beans. The first 4 are objects of inbuilt classes. And if you notice, the name of the Spring Bean is in camel case. Correct? In our case, it is employee. So, the bean name is in lower case. Okay. Now, we need to get this employee object from the IOC container. So, let us write the code for that. The method is context.getBean. If you see, there are many overloaded methods available. I will show you 3 methods. GetBean by passing the bean name. The bean name is employee. This method will return the employee object created by the IOC container. But the return type of getBean is object, so you need to downcast it. Employee is equal to downcast it. Okay. In the next line, using the employee object, I can call greet method. I will copy these 2 lines. Okay. So, in case of Java, you are creating the object all by yourself. In case of Spring, we are asking the IOC container to create the object and give it to us. But what about the name that we have got? We have not provided any name at all. Of course, you can call the setter method of the employee class and you can set the name. That is also possible. There is one other way to assign value for the instance variables, that is for the properties. We will see that. Before that, let us run this. See the output, it is welcome null. Why? Name is not assigned to the employee object. Okay. To assign value for this particular property, I can use @value annotation. Let me go to the employee class. Above the setter method, I can add @value annotation. My dear guys, please remember, @value annotation is not for providing hard-coded values as in Priya, Ram, Tom, John. No, not at all. It is used for retrieving the values that you have provided in the properties file. Just that we have started now with the Spring application, I am providing with hard-coded values. Okay. Within this, let me pass the name. Let me save it. I will come back and I will run it. Now we have got the proper output. So using the IOC container, I am getting the object that is created by it and I am using it. What is a big deal? That is what we are doing it in Java. Then what is the necessity? This is a very simple application. Going forward, you will be working in layered architecture where there will be dependencies between classes. As a developer, you cannot always remember and add the dependencies. But with the help of Spring, it is very easier to be done. Spring helps to develop loosely coupled applications. Going forward, you will understand the meaning of all this. Okay. I told you there are many overloaded methods of getBean. So let us use the next method, which takes one parameter. Here I will pass the dot class name, employee dot class. So obviously the return type will be employee. Either I can use the same variable or I can create a new variable. Okay. And again I'll use the same variable message and call the greet method. And one more method of getBean, context dot get bean of. This time I am going to use the fourth overloaded method, the bean name and the class type. Okay, so the bean name is employee and the class type is employee.class. This time also the return type will be employee because explicitly you are specifying what is the class type. Employee equal to, and I will copy these two. In all these cases, we have given the employee name as Kevin, so the output will come only with Kevin. Now let us run this. You can see the output. In all the three cases, we are getting it as Kevin. If you notice, 3 times we are trying to retrieve an employee object by passing the bean name. Will the IOC container create a new employee object every time, or will it return the same object? In this case, Spring IOC container will create only one single object for a class. The Spring beans created by the IOC containers are singleton. That is one object per class. How many ever times you are asking, the same object only will be returned to you. So in this case, if you notice, it is creating an employee object. It is setting the value of that employee object's instance variable, that is the property, to Kevin, and it is returning the object. How many ever times you are asking, the same object only will be returned to you. So you need to remember the scope of a spring bean is singleton by nature. Okay. One other important thing I want to talk about is I don't want to provide value directly inside at value annotation. So what we can do? We can assign the values in the properties file and we can retrieve it using at value annotation. So let me go and create a properties file. The properties file should be created inside resources folder. So select resources, right click, new file. Let me give the file name as application.properties, all in lowercase only. Click finish. Now I need to provide the employee name. I can give any key value pair, but the right approach is using the class name in lowercase, as in employee.emp name equal to Raju. Okay. Remember, again I am repeating, Spring is not for setting values for employee object, student object, address object, not at all. But if you are working with a Spring application integrated with a database, then the application needs the database to which you are connecting. What is the dialect that you are using? What is the URL? What is the username? What is the password? In those scenarios, you will provide all those data in the properties file. The Spring application will retrieve the data from the properties file and use it for integrating it with the database. Okay. Now, let me go to employee. How will I retrieve the value that is available in the properties file? Using expression language. If you have worked with Java, if I want to provide values in the command line, then I need to provide expression language using string prompt. So this $curly brace is called as expression language. We use the same thing in JSP also, Java server pages. Okay, now let us pass this. Let us avoid typos. So copy it and add it over here. Okay. Now we are informing the IOC container that it has to retrieve the value for this employee name from the properties file. How will Spring even know that there is a properties file? That also can be done with the help of annotations. Above the class, add one more annotation as at property source, within which you need to specify where the properties file is available. Technically, the properties file is available in the class path. That is, you have added it inside resources folder. So obviously, Spring Framework knows where exactly it is available. Class path, colon, the file name is application.properties. Let me save this. So I hope it is clear. I am trying to retrieve the values for my instance variable from a properties file. I need to inform the IOC container about this. So we are using at property source annotation. Now again go to employee main, run this. Now see the output. It has changed from Kevin to Raju. So what we have learnt is how to create an IOC container. We have also understood what is annotation config application context, and we have seen what are the beans created by the IOC container and how to assign values for the properties using @value annotation, retrieve the value from application.properties. We will do one other simple example. This time I will make it little bit bigger. First let me explain it. So this time I am going to work with the service layer. So let me create a packages com.shristi.bookapp. I will have one interface. Let me have the interface name as iBookService. Okay. Technically we will be creating layered architecture. We will be creating a service package. We will be creating an interface, implementation class, and we will be proceeding with applications. Just to give a hint of it, we are doing this now. This is an interface having one single method, getAll. The return type is a list of books. So I will have it as list of string. I need to create an implementation class for this. Book service IMPL, which implements iBookService. Now you provide the proper implementation for getAll. Once you have completed it, if you are using Java, then you will write the code as iBookService, book service is equal to new book service IMPL. Then using this reference, we will be calling the getAll method to retrieve the list of books. This is Java part. But if you are using Spring framework, we will not create an object for the implementation class. Rather, we will get this particular object from the IOC container. But how it will recognize that it has to create an object for this? You need to annotate this class with @component. But because we have created this as a service component, you can use @service annotation above this implementation class. Can I use the annotation above the interface? Not at all, because we cannot create an object for an interface. So the annotation should be added above the implementation class. What will be the Spring Bean name? The class name in camel case. Book service IMPL. Okay. Now let us try this out. Let me first create the interface. I will change the package name to com.shristi.bookapp. Interface name is iBookService. Let me have a method. List of string getAll. Import list. Create the implementation class. Right click. New class. Book service IMPL. Implements iBookService. Add unimplemented methods. And this class should be annotated with @service. Let me write the logic. See, as I told you, Spring is used only for creating the objects for your application and adding the dependencies needed for your objects. It will not provide you with any code or any logic. That is up to you. List.of Java Spring microservices. Okay. Now we need to create the main class in this package, or we can even work with the other main class. Let me create a separate main class. New class, book main. I need public static void main. Click finish. Okay. I'll copy till this part. Go to book main. Now I want to know what are all the beans created by the IOC container. This time if you notice, I have given it as com.shristi. So it will show you the first 4 beans of the inbuilt class together with that employee object and also for book service IMPL. Let me save this and let me run it. Right click, run as Java application. Now see, the first 4 objects are from the inbuilt classes Together with that, the employee object and book service IMPL. Because I have given it as com.shristi. If I have given it as com.shristi.booker, it will show only book service IMPL. Now let us call the method of book service IMPL. I will not expose the implementation class. My dear guys, the real abstraction happens only in Spring. You will not even know where is the implementation class, because we will be calling the methods using the reference of the interface. If you are working in Java, you need to write it as interface reference is equal to implementation class. Here we will not be using the implementation class object at all. So iBook service, book service is equal to context dot get bean of. I can pass the bean name, book service IMPL. Downcast it to iBook service. In the next line, book service dot get all. This returns the list. I am using Streams API for iterating, so let me use for each. Let me use method reference system.out : println. If you don't want to do this, use a simple for loop. For each. Both should work perfectly fine. Okay. Now I will comment this alone. Let us run this. I hope it is clear. We have got the output. So the purpose of Spring in this particular example is to create objects for our application. And if at all, if you want to provide values for your instance variables, you can use the properties file to assign values. Technically, it is used for providing values for the inbuilt classes. Okay, now I have completed both the examples. We have used Maven for working with these examples. Now I want you guys to take time and understand the fundamental concepts of Spring and also learn how to create a Spring application using Maven. You have got one full day till tomorrow 6 p.m. You take time, dive into the concepts, understand the examples. I will provide you 1 or 2 assignments in the WhatsApp. You can try that out and be ready for tomorrow's challenge. Tomorrow we will be learning about dependency injection. Let us learn, code, grow together. Thank you.